Hey everyone, this is Bulba Trainer. I wanted to say welcome to all my new subscribers and give a thank you to every one of you. It really means a lot to me. If this is your first video and you like to watch Pokemon vids, please consider subscribing. I like making list videos, but I don't want that to be the only content that I release. I'd like to release a Nuzlocke challenge or a shiny hunt, but I'm still trying to work on the balance between YouTube and my job, at least until I can make YouTube my job. I did, however, find a way to change it up with this idea that had been bumping around in my head for a while. The Pokemon world has no shortage of theories and speculation, a lot of which are fun to think about and discuss, even if the subject is a video game franchise. I have some ideas about Cubone and the supposed war that I want to flesh out a bit in future videos, but today is about the line between animals and Pokemon, both in their world and in relation to ours, and actually started with my curiosity about the Pokérus and whether or not it could count as a Pokemon itself, and then kind of grew from there. I don't know if it counts as a full theory or just speculation, but I hope you enjoy it either way. If you have further thoughts or disagreements, let me know in the comments, but let's keep it respectful. I want to apologize for mostly using Season 1 references, but I watched it most recently and it's still really fresh in my mind. I also realize that I'm hardly the first person to talk about the topic of animals in the Pokemon world, but this is my take on it. As I said, the beginnings of this topic started years ago when I first had the Pokérus in my party. The nurse at the Pokemon Center told me that microscopic life forms had gotten stuck to my Pokemon. Gen 2's dialogue was different. Of course, it's mainly more of a game mechanic than an attempt at biology, but I've always been curious about that particular phrasing. To be honest, it sounds more like an infestation of ticks or mites, since stuck or attached are the key words used. But no matter what verbs are used, the Pokérus is specifically called a life form. A life form. Beyond the benefits to the EVs of your Pokemon, not much more is known about it, either in-universe or in the real world. We don't know what it looks like, what, if anything, it eats. Where it came from, nothing. But could it be a Pokemon? My knee-jerk response would be no. It's not ever been mentioned to be one in the years since it was introduced. There's so little information on it, and mainly exists as a way to help your actual Pokemon. But the phrase life form made me hesitate and think about it, and I came up with an answer, even if it wasn't the one I thought it would be. Let's get a bit into what Pokemon actually are in-universe to try to lock this down. From the very beginning, Pokemon have been referred to as creatures. In fact, when you're introduced to the world by the opening dialogue, that is usually the definition that will be given to you. They inhabit the Pokemon world in a way that can seem similar to animals in our own at first glance. We can't say they're just animals, though, because the ghost types and the non-fleshy Pokemon like Voltorb or Klinklang don't fall into that category. But we can't say that they seem particularly distinct from animals either, considering the roles they play in their world. Does that mean that creatures in this sense refers to all non-human life forms in the Pokemon world? If that's the only requirement for being a Pokemon, then in that sense, yes, the Pokérus would be considered a Pokemon that simply hasn't been cataloged yet. It is stated to be a life form, it isn't human, it's a microscopic Pokemon. But things aren't that simple. I wouldn't have made this video if they were. But we do have a good base to build on. All Pokemon are life forms, but not all life forms are Pokemon. Going back to the point I made a second ago to further our definition, Pokemon aren't always based on animals, but they do mostly take the place of them in the Pokemon world. They inhabit particular environments, can be raised as pets, have distinct healthcare facilities and occupations, have a function in assisting humans, and have cultural significance. There's been the occasional scene or piece of art that depicts our real-world animals in the series, though, and it can cause a similar confusion as the type I experienced with the Pokérus. If Pokemon are meant to be a substitute for animals, why are animals still present in their world? There's a few examples, but I want to use these fish at the Cerulean City Gym. They're not Pokemon. Their designs have never been used in the decades since to represent any Pokemon, but they're in an aquarium, they're viewable, they're known about. At this time in universe, people in this region thought there were less than 151 Pokemon. Who knew about Mew and Mewtwo at this point in the story is irrelevant to the theory at hand. And Ash had recently been laughed at for saying he had seen a new one in the form of Ho. If these fish were meant to be Pokemon, they would have been classified as such. If they were caught and put on display for the public, scientists are aware of them and could have called them Pokemon if they wanted to. And yes, I realize that these fish, or the ones outside the St. Anne after it sinks, spoiler alert, this ship is going to sink. Or the dozens of animals seen in other places, or the references to insects or Indian elephants in the Pokédex are more than likely just additions to help people relate to the universe. But their inclusion raises the same question as the topic of this video. Where is that line drawn in universe between just an animal or life form and a Pokemon? There is a potential key difference between the two. I love dogs, but I've never had one that just automatically barked on command or instinctually knew to go to the bathroom outside. It takes time and work in the real world to see such results, and if dogs could breathe fire, that would be a bigger challenge. Pokemon, for the most part, possess a sort of sentience and intelligence that isn't really present in animals in our world. A perfect example of this would be after Ash catches Caterpie and it has an entire conversation with Pikachu, presumably about world domination. Caterpillars and mice don't usually do that. Even if in our world they possess the ability to have conversations with others of the same species, they probably wouldn't talk to each other. While aware, they lack the spark, for want of a better term, that Pokemon seem to have. They have instincts that they follow, to find food, to stay alive, to have offspring. That's about it. Pokemon have these impulses as well, but most seem to have something more. I don't mean to imply that our real-world animals don't have intelligence or communication. In fact, crows can describe particular humans to one another. Think about that the next time you throw something at a flock of them. Usually, my dogs figure out how to whine in such a way that I can guess what they want, much like trainers do with their own Pokemon's cries. However, if my cat wanted to talk to my dog, nothing would happen. Dogs may be able to read and respond to body language from cats, but they cannot directly communicate with one another, at least not anything more than a threatening-sounding growl or hiss. Pokemon, on the other hand, can mostly understand one another and humans, though, and then convey that complex information to their trainers or others, or even act on that information of their own free will. Think about how Meowth learned to speak and read human and walk bipedally of his own accord. There's not too many animals I know of that can say the same. So maybe that's how we draw the line. Maybe when we see worms or fish or the Pokérus, they simply don't have that spark that allows them to be cognitively unique from the animals in our own world. However, we can't fully count this either. For one thing, some Pokemon have been shown to have a more feral or instinct-based nature from time to time. They won't respond to reason or even their own self-preservation, meaning that while some Pokemon are smarter than any animals and even some humans on our planet, some are at the same level or below, yet they're still considered Pokemon. For another thing, since we have so little information on the Pokérus and the other animals shown in the series, we can't say for certain that they don't possess the spark. Maybe the Pokérus is intelligent. Maybe the fish in the Cerulean City gym were talking to one another about Ash. We just can't know for sure. So that can't be the final answer. We could say that Pokemon can be commanded without technically needing any training, while non-Pokemon cannot. Think about ordering a worm or a fish to execute dig or water gun. It isn't going to happen. Leave that poor fish alone. However, a trainer can walk into Petalburg Woods, capture a Shroomish, get into another battle, tell it to use tackle, and it will. Every time. As long as you collect the required badges, it will continue to faithfully obey you throughout your entire playthrough. However, if this is our criteria, then we'll be set back every time a Pokemon ignores its trainer in the anime. In Dig Those Diglett, for example, it's even shown that Pokemon have the free will to ignore their trainers for moral reasons that the trainers aren't even aware of, meaning that Pokemon obeying humans is a totally free choice that they make, which will be an interesting video down the road, but doesn't solve the problem at hand. I've been thinking about this off and on for years, but it wasn't until I actually started writing this script that I think I pieced it together. To explain, I'll have to go on a bit of a tangent, but just stick with me, it'll all make sense, I promise. In Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, there's a series of folktales about the Pokemon world. In fact, these games are the source of the creation myth for the series. But we're going to be looking at another rather infamous story as well. In Canalave City, there is a library where many stories, including the previously mentioned creation myth, are housed. One of the stories talks about humans and Pokemon eating at the same table, which is watered down. Originally in Japanese, it actually says that humans and Pokemon intermarried, and even in that bad translation, it says they were one and the same. There was no distinction. Let's not dwell too much on the actual words, please, but rather the implication that humans and Pokemon share a common ancestry in the Pokemon world. I mean, if the creation myth is to be believed, it was actually certain Pokemon who came before humans. So the idea of them springing from the same source isn't as outlandish as it seems at first. And even in-universe, Pokemon from different species can still show affection for one another and produce eggs together. At a certain point, Pokemon just became too different from humans. But it would explain why some of Kadabra's Pokédex entries mention a boy turning into one, or why some ghost Pokemon are explicitly stated to have been human at one point. If humans were once similar to Pokemon, it stands to reason that certain situations might cause them to become Pokemon again. It also nicely explains why some humans can use special powers like telekinesis or aura. Some are simply gifted enough to access and command the abilities that many Pokemon share. How does this relate to the Pokérus or fish, though? Because my theory is that the Pokemon world developed much like our own, evolutionarily speaking, except with Pokemon and humans being introduced separately and suddenly to that environment. Think about our planet without humans. Except for the alterations we've made to certain plant and animal species, for the most part, they would be the same. Worms would have still evolved on their own, as would fish and birds and Indian elephants. They just wouldn't be called that. If humans and Pokemon were introduced to that world together, they'd make changes, and with superior technology, skills, and intelligence, could become the dominant species on the planet. What if, after the legendaries made the Pokemon world, life began to evolve on its own? Since the myths don't deal in timetables and are, well, myths, the exact details aren't too clear. But since we aren't even sure about the origins of life on our own planet, there's nothing stopping a similar process occurring in the Pokemon world, with natural evolution taking place between the time when Arceus and the first Pokemon appeared and shaped the world, and when more common Pokemon and humans started interacting with things. Due to higher intelligence and technological skill, they've mastered matter-to-energy conversion for centuries. They quickly became the dominant species and, as would happen, may have had a hand in disrupting the populations of animals we would recognize. Humans in our world have been responsible for or contributed to extinction going back to the woolly mammoth and Silphium. Certainly the sudden introduction of humans and hundreds of Pokemon species could have had a similar but more exacerbated effect to the Pokemon world. As time went on in the Pokemon world, the number of animals as we know them could have drastically dropped, which is why it's so rare to see or hear from them. Occasionally they are mentioned, but because of the bond humans and Pokemon share, are mostly forgotten, ignored, or are even seen as lesser species, which sounds harsh but is present in our own world. Culturally, in the United States, for example, a stray ant or cockroach in your home generates a vastly different response than a stray skunk or dog. Usually. It would explain a lot. How fish and chicken can be served in restaurants, how Ghastly could turn into a mongoose and everyone be aware of what that means, how Pidgey can still find worms to eat. All of these are animals that still exist in small numbers or less populated areas, or were present at one point in the Pokemon world and are still known about. It can also explain the Pokérus, however. The Pokérus would be similar to a mite or a tick, as I mentioned, but wouldn't be recognized as such because it's not a Pokemon. It's a life form that evolved alongside Pokemon and developed mutualistic properties in order to survive. It got conflated with a virus because humans either forgot or never learned that regular animals could attach themselves to Pokemon in that way. Joltik is similar in its behavior, but is still a Pokemon. Because the Pokérus is beneficial, it is allowed to proliferate and do what it does, but because it isn't a Pokemon, there's no focus on researching or cataloging it. There are no acarologists that we know of in the Pokemon world, and the smallest mites here on Earth are also in the microscopic range under normal viewing conditions, so it seems likely that they simply wouldn't be understood. So, circling back to the original question, is the Pokérus a Pokemon? No, I don't think so. But I think we have a semi-decent answer into why it still exists in the Pokemon world and how other real-world animals that we've seen are also there. I had a lot of fun researching and putting this video together. I was looking at philosophy, biology, acarology, and it really made for an enjoyable project. I hope you liked it as well. If you have constructive thoughts on this theory, I would love to see them below. And while I did try to look for someone else who may have already come up with this theory, searching "Is the Pokérus a Pokemon?" made Google only focus on the two big words. If you know of someone else who has also made this conclusion, go ahead and let me know in the comments so they can be seen. Like I said, I have more theories half finished in my head or on notes, so if you want to see more, please consider leaving a like and subscribing so you don't miss out. Also, if you want updates about upcoming videos, consider checking out my Twitter, where I post progress and other random stuff. Stay safe, and I will see you all next time.